grid, stand up. SBC, Black Elvis, Roddy, OG, it's wavy. Look, started from the bottom, so we off the grid. Tryna make it to the top, we soon live off the grid. Had dreams of making teams, I was just a kid. But we off the grid, yeah, we off the grid. On the come up, so we off the grid. Had dreams of the league, we was all just kids. And the bullets from the underground, they often miss. The podcast bringing light, so they don't call it quits. Now pass the rock, I'm open on the 10. They call me wavy in the red zone for the win. And do your dance on them, raise the roof, we got catch a pick and then do it again.
Get your popcorn. The 4th episode of Off the Grid begins right now. I'm your boy, the commish, here with my man D-Dub and Roddy. Last week we touched on trainers, but with the emergence of COVID, the second round, we decided to get back into that. We would like to touch on, last week we touched on trainers and the differences between what people are supposed to be doing during the second round of COVID. But with COVID coming back stronger than ever in the city, we have determined that high school football might be terminated altogether. So with this show here, we're going to talk about the differences in how the factions are handling it. High school, college, and pro.
So with COVID reemerging and a lot of things changing, public schools period in New York State have been shut back down. It's tough, but again, I want to remain high, hopeful, because it's early. The game plan is to go live at the beginning of March. So, arguably, if things get back under control by mid-January, you get guys in camp by the end of January, early February, I think it can still happen. I'm hopeful because there's a lot of recruitment banking on these guys playing football in the spring and having some type of film to put out for college coaches to look at. Look at what the NFL is going through. The NFL, or even college, for example, right? We got college football and pro football, and these guys have all of the resources in the world, and they're having a hard time managing it. So they expect that high school football, which is at the bottom of the rung, has the least amount of financing, the least amount of support. I don't even know that people really understand the importance and what's at stake here. And this is really impacting lives. I think a lot of people think that we're on here playing a harp, but the reality is that our communities put heavy focus on higher learning happening through academic scholarship, and that's just a fact, right? We're not being genuine with each other if we don't admit that.
Yeah, we were just talking about how I asked if he thinks that in the South they get more offers because football is bigger out there, and he said of course. But I think the bigger question then becomes what does the community over here have to do for there not to be a question about, are we having a game, or is the season happening? Because if you could take the precautions that you have to take somewhere else and it could happen, why we can't do it over here?
Well, listen.
But I mean, there's more people. There's more people in New York City per se. But it's gotta be a way to figure out. Everybody gets tested. I mean, that stuff gotta get paid for. People get tested, hand sanitizer, wearing masks, having refs, things that you could do that though. I don't know. I just
could, but they're not doing it. That's the problem.
But that's what I'm saying. So
we make a lot of comparisons to what happens in the South, what happens in the Midwest, what happens in Texas. I think we need to be very clear. The culture in these places is football driven. Football is a part of the religion in Texas, in Florida, in the Carolinas, in Ohio, in California. Not too long ago, I remember there was a New York politician that was really pushing an envelope on trying to say there was no tackle U football, and kids shouldn't be playing tackle until they're 13 or 14 years old. So we're not being, again, sincere if we don't admit that the culture of New York City, the culture in New York State, is not as in lockstep with this game of football as some other communities are.
But I think those kids out there, they wake up and they live, they eat, they sleep football. I'm in the city, I wake up and I do the same thing.
Yeah,
but because my community is not as driven as I am.
I'm talking about the political community of New York State, the political community of New York City.
Well, I'm talking about the same community talking.
Yeah, right.
Parents,
I'm talking about the people.
I have got to get on my soapbox and say, parents, youth programs, coaches in New York City in the past 10 years have bought into and tried to create an environment that gave kids opportunities for scholarship. And I don't believe that people have rested on that. The problem is they're fighting a battle that they need buy-in from the big dogs to happen.
No, but remember, New York, we have so many options. We don't, as income, we don't depend on those games. Down south, a lot of the incomes depend on those games. So their advocacy for football is not only for my kid, it's for my store.
Stop and think about what you just said, though. You're making an excuse and saying that salary, the same positions that exist in the football game in the South exist here. The refs got to get paid, the coaches.
But our parents are at work. Our parents are too busy having to make the ends meet at this high level here. Whereas, I mean, not saying, we know the disparity in pay and all of that, but you got to understand, if that whole town is football driven, we shut down for the game. And if you're saying there's no game, not only we shut down, we're losing because we're selling stuff at those games. We're making money after those games is over and they all come back here and spend all their money. So bigger reason.
It's a timing thing, and I hate that term. Like, I hated when a guy told me something didn't happen for me because of timing. Yeah. But the reality is, the culture of football, say in a place like South Carolina, where the town's going to shut down for Friday night football games, New York is approaching that. And I know it sounds crazy.
We didn't need a reason.
We're getting there, but we're still not there yet. Mm-hmm. The guy who is the senator in South Carolina, the guy who is the congressman in South Carolina, he grew up on this culture. He or she grew up understanding, like, hey, this is where we hang out. This is where we meet up at. We all go to the football game. Mm-hmm. That has not completely happened across the board here. For any sport. Some people...
Because you got to remember, it's football, but it's also the band. So you have everybody in these towns or these states linked to that football. So I'm pushing, you stopping football, now my band can't play. Now my son who's been playing the drums or been playing the horn or been doing this for 4 years, he ain't got no way.
So you're saying it's more level. Just like
it's more
culture. Even with like with Corona happening again or there being another wave or whatever, that giving people like a mayor or whatever the case to give a reason and say, oh no, no football. Or no sports.
They're not saying no football. See, New York is such a big place that the person in charge of making that decision is never going to do the controversial thing that you can call them on. But what they are doing is
they're shutting bigger things down.
Correct. So they're making decisions that are indirectly and directly implicated in that. And you can't even argue with them because they're selling it under the premise that, listen, I have to make a safety decision for every. And listen, be clear. We are not saying that COVID isn't real. Yeah. We are not saying that we shouldn't be doing this.
Safe.
But the things that have been considered critical and important things to society, they have found a way to maintain those things. This is not a high priority, and while I'm not going to put anybody at risk to play football, I don't believe that we have honestly taken an approach to say, how can we make this happen in a safe way while still creating opportunities?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, so as we see it, we know that high school may not have any games. College is flip-flopping. There are games sometime. There's games being canceled. We got a limited amount of players. How is the NFL handling it? They don't have a bubble situation like the NBA. So what are they doing that we can't follow?
I mean, they play all of their games. And like I said earlier, a lot of it is, I think it's because of funding and because they have the money to be able to have people out there, whatever the case may be. But even with one of the teams, the Broncos, they had 4 guys. Apparently they was watching film, and Corona was in the room or something like that.
Don't say 4 guys, 4 quarterbacks.
All 4 of the quarterbacks were watching film, and Corona was in the room, and they couldn't play. So I don't know who you said they got.
They got a wide receiver, right? A wide receiver led the charge. They got blown out though. But it shows that something is real, and we can't understand. Everybody's getting it, but no one is being hospitalized. They're going home. They're sending them home for 2 weeks.
This is a positive note, man.
Which is good. Yeah, it's definitely a good thing. But you know, we have to figure out how can we transition that to the young boys as well. You know, we use these pro teams as models, you know, and if they're not showing us, what do we do? How do we keep the kids on there, like you said, if we're not having a model to follow?
I think it's weird because, like you said, as kids or as the younger athlete, we look up to the NFL or we look up to college. So you look at it and you say, well, damn, how can they're having a season. Why can't I have mine? And you say, oh, well, maybe money or whatever the case. But nah, I don't care about that.
They don't.
If the NFL and the college guys can figure out something to get their season going, why can't mine go? And then you get stuck in the, but you know, people are dying and people are getting sick. But it's like, my dreams are being put on hold. But like, the further I get, those guys are still doing it, and I'm trying to get where they at. So how am I being stopped here and trying to get to where they at, and they're still moving?
That's a great question. And honestly, where he started is not where I thought he was going to end up at. But that premise that the youth athlete chases the guys on the next level and the high school athletes chase the guy on the next level, the guy on the next level gets paid. The guys in high school and college, even the youth ball players, their pay is the experience.
It's a dream. It's
their
just
pay
the motivation
is
behind it.
What I think is going to happen at the end of this.
And what I realized
that's everyone's.
For every
let's call it what it is. The currency of high school football and youth football is just being able to play. That's the payout.
Nah.
So people are not getting paid because we're trying to protect. But on the highest level where the most money is being made, the risk management model is totally different.
From the outside, you look at it that way, but thinking about is my drive is off of motivation. All you can do is wake up and say, all right, I'm motivated to be a better football player. Now, I'm looking at guys who are older than me. They're playing football, and I'm not. But I still have to wake up and be motivated, even though they're getting paid. I'm supposed to still wake up with Corona going on, not being able to go to the gym, not being able to have practice, not having the season, not having film, with all of these things behind me. And it's like, now all I'm supposed to feed off of is my own determination, along with not having help from the community or the culture.
The culture. Yeah,
so it's like now that is, all of these things are against me, but the older guy gets paid, so it's cool.
Listen, for me, at my age, I think I can finally understand that in order for things to happen, they usually are a generation or two later, right? So when you look at good basketball families, let's take Stephon Marbury, great documentary, kid from Coney Island. But the word on the street was his older brothers wasn't nothing to play with. But it took for it to come down, for them to have their miscues and all of that. So my message to you as a member of the football community from the younger generation, I didn't get to go to youth football games as a kid. I didn't get to participate in that particular thing on the level that you did. But when you become a father, there's going to be a certain expectation, and your kid is going to exponentially benefit from the fact that you've gone through it, you've seen it. You can laugh all you want, but as your dad, I had to figure it out and feel my way through it. I didn't have a point of reference to go to. We have to understand that a product grows based on continuous improvement. We can sit here and point out all of the flaws, but you've got to stay engaged. You owe it to the football community.
And football kept a lot of people, a lot of the athletes, and that's what I noticed too, is like, what I had to realize, like, even about my personal self, is that since I was 6'7", I had guys like a Coach Alex or Coach Ali, my father, around me, coaching me football, not only, but then telling me every day, like, things like, if you want to do something, you got to work hard. You got to keep going. You got to keep going. Do more, another one. And it's just like, you think about it, even in the weight room, another one. Come to the gym. I was working out 3 times a day. Work out again. And it's just like, now as I get older, and Corona hit, I'm trying to figure out why do you get in such a bad space, and it's because I'm not having something to fight for.
Yeah.
You so used to fighting for something so it's kind of just like a little.
So it's more depression.
Yeah, and
besides
that's real.
The fact a lot of these kids don't get the support in the house. You know.
Correct.
You know, if grandma ain't coming to the game, no
and
matter
they don't
how
understand
good you
it. They don't understand.
You know what I mean? Like,
listen, my grandmother was hands down the most influential person in my life as a young person. But she did not understand the benefit of playing basketball for me, the opportunities that it was. You know, so every generation does what they think is best.
Yes.
But you got to keep pushing the culture forward. That's my message to anybody that's listening. Young guys that are upset right now, guys that may be finished with high school ball, you know, there is space for you to contribute back to the game of football. The football community needs you, and that's pretty much what we need to go with.
All right. Thanks again for watching episode 4 Off the Grid. We'll see you next week.
The game, we wasn't from the same hoods. The ball kept us off the block, had to try to remain good. Started from the bottom, so you know we off the grid. Trying to make it to the top, so we live off the grid. Had dreams of making teams, I was just a kid. Oh, we off the grid? Yeah, we off the grid.